Hello, everybody, and welcome to the birthday bash for Bane. Tonight, Chuck Dixon and I are gonna tell you about the creation of Bane, and I hope you guys will enjoy that because we didn't expect this to be able to talk about this thing 30 years later. To be honest with you, whenever you create anything, you always hope that it's going to hit that zeitgeist. And if it was that easy, everything you create would do that. But every once in a while, it does hit. And in this case, Bane did, and eventually became part of popular culture. And Chuck and I couldn't be happier. Chuck's camera is a little wacky, and so we're gonna have to deal with that wonderful cartoon picture of him. But he is here. Hello, Chuck Dixon.
Happy birthday to Bane. I won't sing anymore because it would cost you money. Yeah, it's a shame my camera's not working. You can't see the cake I made. I made up a picture of Venom.
Oh my gosh!
Terrible.
Everybody is just not going to get all the full value of tonight's show.
Yeah. You have to give them a discount. So.
Yeah. Well, if you use super chats, my friends, which I hope you will, because that helps pay for StreamYard, which is not cheap. I'll give you a discount because you're only getting half of us. Oh man. So, I didn't realize that today was the day 30 years ago that Vengeance of Bane was released. I saw it on the internet. And I was like, oh, wow. That's pretty incredible. And so that's when I made this post and everything about it. And I thought, this would be a great opportunity to talk about it and have the two of us, maybe just tell our recollections of how together, because we've been on various shows for the last 30 years, and the question comes up every time, well, how did you create Bane? What was the impetus, all that kind of stuff, and but I don't know if we've ever done it together.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so this could be really cool.
I'm sure there's stuff I don't know on your end. So.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll find out tonight.
Yeah, there you go. Solve a mystery.
Right. So, let's start off with the very, very beginning. You had gotten the gig on Detective Comics, right?
Right.
From Denny.
Yeah. Based off of the success of the Robin miniseries that I did, the two Robin miniseries.
So you had the Robin miniseries, which introduced Tim Drake, who was an awesome character that everybody fell in love with very quickly. And then they offered you Detective Comics, and who did you replace? It was an English guy, right?
Yeah, it was Peter Milligan, and Denny he kept giving him chances, but Peter didn't seem to understand how to write a story that had a hero in it.
Right.
And I think the end of it was an arc called The Idiot Route, in which basically he portrayed Batman as a bumbling moron. He gets poisoned with some toxin. And I think that was like the last straw for Denny. He just said, well, you're just not suited for this. You're a talented writer, but you're not suited for this. So,
but Milligan had followed Alan Grant, right?
Yeah. But Alan could write heroes.
Yeah, Alan is an unsung hero. Alan Grant and Norm Brayfogle had an absolutely amazing run on Detective. I love their work.
Yeah, I hadn't followed Batman in years, and when I realized what these guys were doing, I followed it religiously.
Same with me. I started reading their stuff. They brought in those quirky kind of characters. Alan knew how to write heroics. He understood who Batman was and what motivated him. From the heroic sense, not like the nihilistic, realistic sense that Frank Miller eventually brought, to it, which in my personal opinion, and this is going to ruffle some feathers, I think The Dark Knight was a groundbreaker when it came out, and it was never supposed to be part of continuity. And that nihilistic Batman has become the standard now, and it loses that heroic ideal that what drove Bruce Wayne, that he sacrificed everything, not because of of revenge, but because he didn't want anybody to have to go through what he did. And that's the heroic ideal. And that's what I always loved about Batman. And that aspect of the character seems to be long gone.
Yeah, he also stripped away the fantastical element of Batman.
Right.
Because you have these colorful villains. I mean, let's face it, there's nobody like that in the real world. There never could be. They'd be caught in 5 minutes. But
right.
that was part of the conceit of Batman is that he had these arch nemesis, these foes, and they were all colorful and individual in their own right. And Frank Miller just started the trend to just treat them all like they were Hannibal Lecter, and one note psychopathic characters.
Right. And that's how he treated the bad guys, but the way he treated Batman himself was not that far off.
Right. Yeah, I hate that idea, that cliche idea, the hero and the villain are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can't.
I don't buy that. It's like, that's like, kind of philosophy you come up with after you've had too many beers. So.
Well, I've had a bunch of wine tonight, Chuck, and I don't even think like that way.
Yeah, you'd fight the guy who had that idea.
That's right. What are you talking about?
Why you?
Why? Hey, come here, porcupine. But I mean, the thing I always loved about Batman was the fact that it was the sacrificial nature of the guy's a billionaire. He doesn't need this shit in his life. He's got easy street. Okay, his parents are gone. He's grown out of that. He's a grown man now. Time to move on. He's got billions of dollars. But what does he do? He focuses on making life better for other people, to make sure that crime doesn't impact them the way, it's basically Batman was a war on crime. And that it's a never-ending war because it can never be won.
Right.
But that's the aspect of the character that I love so much. And he did it for heroic reasons and for good reasons. And children didn't fear Batman. Only evil people feared him. And
he could have easily just been a philanthropist, but we see where that takes you as a person. We see these philanthropists in real life, and they just seem sort of like you're not in touch with the real world, and you're not really solving any problems. So Bruce Wayne, he wants to be on the street. He wants to solve the problem. He wants to take this, take these crooks, out of circulation himself.
Right.
It's the only way he knows it'll be done.
Right. And the aspect of him being the world's greatest detective, it has always been for me just the underlying aspect of the character that I loved. I mean, my father was a homicide detective. You and I were offered Detective Comics, and at one point we were both offered Batman, which was a higher paying book. Obviously, detective, just because Batman's not in the title, it doesn't sell as well statistically. And we were offered Batman, and both of us said, no, I want to stay on the flagship book. DC Comics is named after Detective Comics. And because we love the character, we love that history so much, we didn't want to jump to the other book.
Yeah, and we didn't want to leave that idea behind that we were doing basically crime stories.
Right.
Because we wrote mysteries, and most Batman writers never write a mystery. They stay as far away from mystery stories as they can. So, because they're not easy to write. No, they have to have a convincing resolution. They have to be interesting and engaging. without telling the reader, and keep the reader guessing. And also, they've got to be read backwards with as much logic as forwards. They're difficult to construct.
Right.
But I saw it as a challenge. I mean, I think Joker Devil's Advocate is a perfect example. You and I really sweated that one to make that mystery work. There's no plot holes there. It works perfectly.
Yeah. Well, for anybody who hasn't read Joker Devil's Advocate, and I don't blame you because DC didn't promote the hell out of it. But I can almost guarantee you it'll be the best Joker story you ever read. And the history behind that is, we pitched this story. I think we pitched it that day, and then we went over to a Central Park and wrote it, right?
Yeah. We were writing on 3x5 cards.
Yeah. We had these 3x5 cards, and we were writing down all these scenes and stuff because it was a mystery story. And then we would shuffle the cards into place and get the placement of it and number them numerically, like, okay, here's scene 1, 2, 3, so that, and maybe erase it and move that one over here so that the mystery wasn't revealed.
Yeah, because the premise of it is Joker's accused of a crime he didn't commit, and he's going to get the death penalty. And Batman knows he didn't do it. And so Batman's got to prove the Joker is innocent.
Right.
Because from his point of view, if we don't do that, the murderer goes free. And the challenge there for Graham and I was to make that other mystery as compelling as the main story.
Right.
We didn't just sort of phone in the mystery aspect of it, of who the real killer was.
Exactly. And the other aspect of it was that this was our answer to the Killing Joke.
Yeah.
The Killing Joke was, if you don't know the history of High Noon, the movie High Noon, and Rio Bravo, Howard Hawks and John Wayne hated High Noon. They thought that no Americans would behave that way and let that sheriff have to handle everything on his own. And so they thought it was un-American. And so when they made Rio Bravo, it was the sheriff that wouldn't accept the help of the town because they were unprofessionals, and that, he didn't want the deaths of these people on his hand. So they took a completely different approach to it. And that's how Chuck and I felt about this, because we both hated the Killing Joke. We hated how it ended. And so this was our version of it. This was our Howard Hawks, John Wayne version of that. And at the very end, we even reference it, because in the Killing Joke, and this is the thing that really just frosted my ass. That after all the horror and all the shit and what happened to Barbara Gordon and the disgusting things that happened to Jim Gordon in that story, the Batman is now laughing with the Joker who instigated all that stuff. And that I just felt was untenable. And so in our book, Batman confronts the Joker and he says to him, what's wrong? Don't you have any jokes for me? It was our little bing.
Yeah, he really, one of the cool things about that story, and I don't know where we got it or how we accomplished this, but Batman continually psychologically torments the Joker, which is my favorite part of the story. He always one-ups him. He always, you see the Joker, it's very few times in stories where you see the Joker upset, genuinely upset. And he really gets under Joker's skin in these stories, in that story. So
in the scene in the courtroom where the prosecutor, goads him into, just going over the top and blowing his top and Joker's, defense attorney, it's like, objection. That is so great. I love that. Oh my God. So great. But we're not here to talk about the Killing Joke, as awesome as it is. Or, no, I take that back. The Killing Joke is not awesome. Devil's Advocate. We're not here to talk about Devil's Advocate. We're here to talk about our birthday boy of the evening and Bane. So, Chuck, we had mentioned that you had started on Detective Comics, and I suppose that Denny O'Neil approached you and said, we need to do, because Denny wrote the story Venom,
Right.
with Garcia Lopez, and at the time Denny was being pressured by fans and maybe the publisher. I'm not sure that because the Punisher and Wolverine were the most popular characters in comics at that time, and they were killing their adversaries, and people were saying, Batman needs to be more aggressive and more violent, and so I suppose that was the starting point. And did Denny come to you directly for that, Chuck?
Well, I mean, it was that and pressure for Batman to have an event like the Death of Superman, a big, cross company, a title event.
Mm-hmm.
And, mostly, I mean, the first day of the first summit I went to, when we broke for lunch, I didn't know why I was there, because I'm the guy that writes Robin. Why am I here? And he laid out Nightfall, and then we broke for lunch, and then he asked me to stay back, and he said, "Look, I wanted to ask you, would you like to take on Detective?" To which I immediately said, "Yes, I would," because I want to be part of this story. This story is awesome. I want to be a part of this. And he didn't really say what he wanted from me, but I think he knew what I would bring him. And I remember early on when we introduced the Azrael character, who we knew would become Batman for a while. I cautioned everybody. I says, we've got to portray this guy as a total a-hole, so the readers don't fall in love with him. Because a lot of fans want the sort of loner, psychotic, homicidal Batman. They think that's the best Batman version. That's the one they want. And they don't really know what they want, because whenever they tried that, sales would be terrible. And so Denny wanted to prove once and for all, no, that's not the Batman you want. You want the classic Batman who doesn't kill, who's not nuts. And so, we set out to do it, and we succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, because people rejected John Paul Valley and the sales started to fall. The exact opposite of what we wanted. But in that aspect, we succeeded. And I think as a Punisher writer, that was something he wanted me to bring to it.
Right. So when Denny approached you and said, okay, we're going to do this thing, and we want to, take Bruce Wayne out and replace him with Jean Paul Vallée.
Right.
They needed a bad guy to do that, because nothing existed in Batman's canon already that could do that. There was either smart guys or there were really powerful guys, but there was no smart, powerful guy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the only guy was like KG Beast, but Soviet Union had fallen. He was sort of the KG used to be Beast. So, and then he wanted a new villain. He wanted a new villain.
Okay.
That hopefully would have legs and exist beyond what he called the stunt.
Right.
So
and tell people what the placeholder name was for Bane before Chuck came up with the name of Bane. What was the placeholder when you had to refer to this character?
We called him Doc Toxic. Thank God, never stuck.
And of course, that's a somewhat of a reference because of his toxic drug, Venom.
Right.
And Doc is because the premise of Bane is, if you're going to give the elevator pitch, he's the evil Doc Savage.
Right.
So that makes perfect sense. Doc Toxic.
Yeah.
Horrible name to brand, but
Yeah, he had to be the intellectual and physical equal of Batman. That was the
Right,
important key, and addicted to venom because that would be his flaw.
right,
So
right. So once you figured that out, and did Denny come to you and say also, okay, I want to make Venom a part of the story?
oh,
Because Venom
absolutely.
existed prior to this
Right.
in the Venom storyline the Dark Knight.
Yeah, he had to be addicted to venom. That was part of it. It was baked in from the beginning.
I wonder if that doesn't come from Denny's own, struggle with addictions.
Yeah, probably.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It
which I
also.
want to say, Denny was sober for most of the second half of his life. So,
Oh, well,
yeah,
yes, absolutely.
yeah.
At that
He,
point,
he fought that fight and won. So,
yes, yes, definitely. But that that's a writer that tries to write what they know,
yeah,
and bring to the fore um, the troubles and tribulations that they went through
right,
in their own life, and I think that's where the Venom storyline comes from. It's clearly a story of addiction, where Batman becomes, he's looking for that edge,
right,
to that edge, to increase his power somewhat, and but the Venom does more than that, and it
right.
affects his brain and his thinking and all that kind of stuff, like any other mind altering thing that you abuse, whether it be drugs or alcohol.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's probably where all that comes from. So now we have the Venom aspect, and we have um, the uh, the end goal that you're going to replace Bruce Wayne. Um, where did the idea come about for the actual replacement of him? Like, how was that going to be achieved? Like, how do you take Batman out and replace him with the other guy?
Well, Azrael was all Denny, and once again, it comes from Denny's own life. Azrael is the perfect Denny anti-hero. He's a lapsed Catholic, as Denny was, and sort of rejecting that upbringing. Embraces it, is a fanatic, and then rejects it. So he created Azrael in a miniseries with Joe Quesada doing the art,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing about Nightfall is that readers didn't see it coming. They didn't know why we were doing what we were doing, and we were
Right.
setting up Nightfall long before it was announced that this is an event.
Mm-hmm.
So we were putting things in place, like the creation of Azrael, his introduction into the Bat universe, and then the creation of Bane, which is appears to, if you look at the timeline, appears to happen independently of everything else going on, but it isn't. It isn't.
Right.
It's the linchpin for the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing, and that's an interesting story. The first Vengeance of Bane and how that came about. So
Well, that's what I'm leading up to.
yeah,
Is because we're talking about the release of Vengeance of Bane today, 30 years ago.
right,
It's the first time in comic history that that a villain who has never been introduced before gets his own book,
right, right.
and it's sold through the freaking roof.
Yeah, they had what 3 printings, 4 printings? I can't
Three
remember.
printings,
Okay,
yeah, 3 printings, and that third one is hard to find. That's the one that has the blue logo.
oh okay,
Yeah,
okay,
the second one has the Roman numeral 2.
right.
Uh, and the third one, I don't know if it has a Roman 3 on it, but the logo has changed. The logo is a blue.
Hmm. Wow.
Um, so look, let's talk about Vengeance of Bane, and obviously, once the idea of breaking Batman came about, we needed a character to do it. And so, where did your inspirations come from for Bane to come about and break the Batman.
Well, some of the behind the scene mechanics are interesting. Stuff you weren't privy to. He was still called Doc Toxic, and we knew we wanted. It's Vengeance of Bane is what, 48 page?
I
Or
can't
is it
remember. It's
64?
48 or 64.
Yeah, I
think
can't
it's
remember.
64.
But we knew we were going to introduce him in a larger volume, 48, 64 pages, whatever, and a standalone story. And we're still calling him Doc Toxic. Don't really know anything about him, beyond the basics. And Denny's main concern was this has to go on the newsstand, because we don't want to leave newsstand readers out, because at that time there were a lot more people reading Batman in the newsstand than there were in comic shops.
Sure.
And circulation was good on the newsstand, but you didn't want to leave them out. They would be lost in the story. And so this was at a second summit, and Jeanette Kahn was there, the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, "Can we do that?" And I remember her leaving, and she's in the next room on the phone. She's calling back to DC, to the circulation people, and can we make a space for this on the printing schedule? And that determined where it happened, and that determined when Nightfall would be kicked off, when that was published. And so everything's set up. And at that time we knew, I don't know how I got the assignment, but we knew I would be writing it and you would be drawing it. And I don't know how that happened. I think nobody else wanted to do it.
Well, where did the idea come from okay, you got the story arc going.
Right.
I'm curious where the idea came from. Well, let's launch and introduce the villain in a standalone book. Did that come from Denny?
That came from Denny.
Okay.
Let's bring this guy out, and totally establish him.
Okay.
In his own right. This is a character in his own right. He's not some villain we cobbled together in 5 minutes. And so, and it's kind of an announcement that this guy's going to be important to this story, and he's going to be important to Batman going forward. So, so that's all decided, except we don't know his name, don't know anything about him. And so then we continue working on build up to Nightfall. These stories where Batman is being worn down,
right,
and becoming exhausted. And really, this is early days for you on Batman. Mm-hmm. And
well, actually, I was doing detective before that stuff was happening, because I started on Tech 650. That was my first issue.
Right.
And then I did 4 issues. So I did 650, 51, 52, and 53. And then the Nightfall stuff started. But by that time, they had already offered me Vengeance of Bane.
Right.
Because of the work I had done on Detective Comics. And then once that was, I was getting through that, I think that's when they eventually offered me the regular gig on Detective for when I finished it to come back in. And I think that was 663 was our first issue with the Firefly and the Riddler and the Joker were in it, and
right.
Yeah, I think there were like 3 or 4 issues into Nightfall at that point.
Right.
But we kicked it off, of course, with Vengeance of Bane.
Well, the thing is, I mean, there's this space where we're setting Nightfall up, and then we realize, okay, we're at the point now where we've got to know more about this guy. We've got to get this special written. And so we have like a mini summit. And at that time, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and she was like, 8 months pregnant. I was like, I can't go away to New York for a weekend. And so, Denny and a couple of the editors came down to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I was living. And, took a hotel room, and we thrashed it out there. And I remember saying that Bane is at the center of all of this. He's the hub on the wheel. he has to be popular in order for this to work. The readers have to be engaged. They have to
Right.
love to hate him or love him for this whole event, this whole 2-year event we're planning. If Bane fails as a character, we're screwed.
Right.
And I kept pushing this. I said, you can't create a character to be popular. It's not possible. And then he said, well, if you think it's going to be so damn hard, you're going to go do it. And he just gave it to me.
Right.
And I came home, after our little mini summit. It was like, 2 days. And I called you because I knew you were going to be the artist. And plus you're, the most scholarly Batman scholar that I know. So you were going to be the sounding board, and you're going to have to draw this guy. And just started basically, thinking out loud to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were bouncing stuff back to me. And,
Right.
it just sort of worked from there. I mean, I wanted a sort of a man in the iron mask aspect.
Right.
I wanted him to be Latino because the Venom was created on this Caribbean island off of Central America.
Right.
And I had just read a story in Wall Street Journal about how in North Korea, if your father committed a crime and escaped the country, they put you in jail. And I thought, whoa.
That was brilliant. That's an aspect I think that is overlooked in the creation of Bane as a character, because it's that very thing that forms him into the man that he becomes. And here's the thing that other writers don't understand about Bane when they approach him, because they're all working their asses off to do a backbreaking scene.
Right.
And I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's already been done.
Yeah, we've been there.
Yeah, we've been there, done that. But what they don't deal with is that Bane's own worldview is that he's a victim, and that the world owes him something. So he justifies his actions because he was an innocent. He was a child who had to serve a sentence that his father had done, and he didn't do anything wrong, and he takes that with him as an adult, and carries it through in all his behavior. And to me, that is one of the most incredible and deep aspects of the character that almost no other one has had. Hey, AZ, Heels versus Babyface. Thank you for that 100-pound super chat. That is a bunch of good cigars, my friend. Happy birthday, Bane. Hail Graham and Chuck. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I started with, what if a child was put in prison? Then I thought, well, what would make it worse? What if he was born in prison? Born to a life sentence in a hellhole third world prison.
Right.
And what kind of monster would come out the other end of that if they survived?
Right. And what type of a person could survive?
Yeah. And another aspect of his character, a lot of the follow-up writers don't get, is that because this guy was sequestered in a prison for most of his adult life, he's a little bit naive about the outside world.
Exactly. I was just talking to somebody today, is that, Bane is he's a brilliant mind. He's somebody who's a planner and somebody that what's the word I'm looking for? Who like he plays chess with Ra's al Ghul, and he plays like 20 games at one time.
Right.
And he's got all of that, but he's so naive that to the real world, outside of book smarts type of thing, that he tends to, women tend to be a complete unknown to him.
Women are an utter. He's blindsided by every woman he meets.
Exactly. He doesn't get them.
Right.
And
he's prone to fall in love, which I think separates him from almost every other comic book villain. He's a romantic.
he really is.
He puts women on a pedestal, because every time I ever had him run into a woman character, he just falls in love with them.
Yeah.
you know, which
Of
is
course, they're
weird.
all hot.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, I mean, I mean, that's why, when a lot of other writers wrote Bane, they would contact me because, they knew they didn't get it.
Yeah.
So I had Gail Simone, Scott Beatty, Tony Bedard all contacted me when they had the right Bane.
Yeah.
And we had long conversations about what he was about, but what
Yeah.
I knew that they didn't.
Yeah. It's too bad that Tom King didn't call you.
Yeah, well, I think he lost my number. Yeah, he tried to get the CIA to help him find it, but
He called that secretary he worked with as a fellow secretary. Yeah. So once all that came about, and I got Chuck's notes, then the design aspect comes in. Is like, well, okay, what's this character going to look like? And so, my first thought was, if this guy was in this Central American prison his entire life, what would inspire him for his costume? Because he had to have a costume. We needed it to brand him, to copyright him, and all that kind of stuff. And it was the 90s and all that, so he had to have a costume. So my first thought was, okay, Mexican luchador. This is what he would have been exposed to, and it would have been the template for his own look. And the original Bane costume, I nailed 98% of it on the first try.
Yep.
The only things that were different from what you see and what you know of Bane was that I actually had more wires going to his head, and I had the eyes, the nose, and the mouth as a true luchador thing where it was open. And the reason for that was because, A, it's functional. If you've ever worn a mask, for 10 minutes, you just want to pull the damn thing off. You can't breathe.
Well, we've all worn masks recently.
That's true. That's true. Over the nose and mouth, it's a pain in the freaking ass. And I actually have, it's not back there. It's all the way over there. I have a luchador Bane mask that was made in Mexico for the luchadors. Yeah, I did a show, La Mole Con, and a gentleman there had the manufacturer who makes the luchador masks. He made a Bane mask for me.
Cool.
And it's freaking amazing. But, after about 10 minutes, I'm dying in it, because, there's no mouth, nose, or eyelets cut out. The other aspect was I wanted to be able to have the character emote. I thought that was important. I could show his teeth and his eyes and all that kind of stuff. Real world issues, but DC editorial decided they wanted to make him more mysterious kind of guy, and they closed it all up. We put the red over the eyes. All the shapes were the same, but they just blocked it in. And to be honest, I think it was a good choice. I think it was a good editorial decision because it looks really cool.
Well, the other thing is, your idea for the luchador outfit, it let us see his musculature, which was important because this character, once he starts pumping venom,
right,
just
he starts to balloon up.
Yeah, he just gets all jacked up, and we needed to see that. Also, to see, I know this was your suggestion, to see how freaking hairy the guy was because of all the steroids.
Because of the steroids, I've been a weightlifter, and I've always read those magazines and stuff about those guys that were taking the steroids. And I remember one of the other aspects I used to draw on him was not just the hair on the shoulders, which is a result of steroids, but the pimples. I would have the pimples show up on like his chest and stuff, because that's another aspect of 90s steroids. And I thought that was a cool thing to do. Then we had to come up with an idea for how the venom was administered to Bane. because we couldn't have him variably, taking a syringe and digging it into his arm. This is the 90s. There's still the comics code, and we couldn't have we couldn't have him, shooting it up like it was heroin. So I came up with the idea of this unit on his arm with the wires going up into the back of his head. I think Chuck's notes even said something about, the venom having to go into his cordo colossum or something.
Yeah, well, yeah. There was a lot of discussion on my end about Bane's brain physiognomy and how it was different because of the venom.
Right.
He has a wider corpus callosum, and
corpus callosum. That's it.
And the venom would get fed. He has a wider corpus callosum, and because he can be angry and reason at the same time, and the 50% of our population has a wider corpus callosum. They're called women. And that's why women win every argument, because they can be really, really angry but still making sense. And men, when they argue and get angry, they don't make any sense at all.
No,
they stop making sense because there's not. It's all emotion.
Right.
Women can be very emotive and still, win that argument. Still use logic. So I wanted that. And then the venom basically feeds into his hypothalamus.
That's brilliant. Oh my God, that's brilliant. I never thought of it that way.
This is all the stuff, I thought of and we talked about, but never makes it into the comics.
Yeah. So. And speaking of not making it into the comics, one of the aspects I admittedly stole from the great Steve Ditko was, Spider-Man used to have that belt underneath his uniform that carried his web shooter packets, and he would take the packets and slap it into his wrist, his web shooter, and he'd be ready to go. And if you look at Bane's belt, which is exposed, there's all those little rectangles, and those rectangles were supposed to represent packets of the venom. Right. And so he could take one of those packets out, put it in, press the button, and have the venom go up into his head. I don't know that we ever showed that in a comic, but that was part of the notes on the design. And I blatantly ripped that off from Steve Ditko.
If you're going to rip something off, rip it off from the best.
Rip it from the best. Absolutely.
Well, another thing is Bane's name. We didn't know what to call this guy. So I did what I usually do. I got down the old thesaurus and I looked up the word evil. And amongst all the synonyms for evil was Bane. I thought, whoa, Bane, nice. That's pretty cool. So I remember I called DC offices and I got Scott Peterson. And I said, I come up with a name for this guy. He goes, what is it? I said, Bane. He goes, well, we'll think of something better. And at this time, this was the 90s, and all the characters were like, Shadowhawk,
right.
Dark Wolf. And it was like, man, I do not want one of those names. I did not want one of those Rob Liefeld character names for this.
Yeah.
I want something punchy. And so, like 3 days later, everybody was calling him Bane. There was never any further discussion about it.
Now, at the time, Scott Peterson was Denny's assistant editor.
Yeah, and a terrific guy. I'm not downing Scott Peterson, man.
Scott, no, not at all. Awesome. Scott was awesome.
Yeah. But
Scott was our editor because he got promoted to editor on Detective Comics.
Yeah, and you couldn't have a better editor. All those guys. I mean, we were there at a magic time because Denny hired 3 really whip smart guys who were into it. To assist him.
Yeah, Scott and Darren.
And Gorf.
And Gorf,
they were just fantastic to work with. I mean, really diligent, conscientious guys who were as interested in producing quality work as we were. We really were more like partners, than editor, creator.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But the thing is, I mean, in the process, I sort of became the expert on Bane. So the next summit, when we were talking about Nightfall, we were like, well, he's got to figure out who Batman is. And everybody turned to me and said, well, how would he figure that out? How would Bane figure out who Batman is? And I said, he would see Bruce Wayne either on television or somewhere like that, and he would just know. he would recognize the body language. I said, this guy spent all this time in prison. He got to know people because his life depended on it.
Right.
He just know. Because we were going to, they were thinking we had to go through this whole rigmarole process. And I said, no, I don't want him playing detective. That's silly. And it slows the story down. So,
right. And we have a sequence in Vengeance of Bane where Bane first sees Batman, where he's looking down on a roof on him, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think his henchmen are like, why don't you take him out now? And Bane's like, no, I'm still assessing, all that,
Right.
Yeah.
Which was cool because Bane recognizes, Batman's excellence. He recognizes this is a worthy foe.
Exactly. Joseph Fazio, $4.99 super chat. Thank you, sir. Scott Peterson was awesome before he killed his wife. That's not the same Scott Peterson. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in fact, Scott Peterson's email for a long time was not that Scott Peterson. And that was his second wife he killed. They never proved he killed his first wife.
That's right. Anthony Tolan is here. Hi, Graham and Chuck. I'm enjoying the conversation as the person who was working alongside my late wife, Adrienne Roy, coloring almost all the Nightfall and follow-up storyline. Adrienne also colored Vengeance of Bane.
Yeah.
And I was a huge fan of Adrienne's work.
Incredible colors, incredible lady. She was at one of the later summits.
And she had a great sense of color theory, too.
Yeah.
Going back to that Marie Severin style of coloring, which I really love.
Well, to me, a great colorist is observant about color in the real world, and they try to bring that to the comics as much as they can. So there was never any, when Adrienne colored, it looked like there was a palette to a real universe, a real consistent universe. It wasn't just effects or just craziness. The fact that most people didn't notice the coloring is the greatest testament.
Yeah,
because you're not supposed to notice it.
What I love about
it's like lettering. When the lettering is good, you don't notice it.
Right. When those balloons are too tight to the words, my hackles go up.
Or when the balloon's just in the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing I love about great colorists like Adrienne is their ability to separate planes for clarity.
Yeah.
So you've got three set. You've got a middle ground, foreground, and background, or foreground, middle ground, background, and you can, instead of modeling everything so that it all flattens, you've got your warmer colors forward and your cooler colors back, and it separates all those forms and gives it a sense of depth and distance, and that's what I love to see.
She did it in a very subtle way, because a lot of, well, not so much anymore, but colorists used to take a shortcut of like making all the foreground figures blue. And it's like she never did that. It was more gradiated, which is amazing because of the limited palette you really had in comics.
Oh yeah, it started with I think 64 colors, and then it went up to 120 or something like that, and then
But even then, I mean, that's limiting. It really
is.
Sure.
Now that it's unlimited,
Right.
If you can think of it, they can do it.
They're probably inventing new colors. There's probably colors in the comics we can't even see.
Anthony says, Adrienne and I, while walking home at the office, would often challenge each other to figure out the color percentage on various buildings and portions of the sky. Well, that's some date.
Well, that always amazed me because Gorf and Scott Peterson and Darren, they were all color geeks too. I mean, they would argue over color values, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right? But it's so important.
I don't even know what they're talking about. This is a K5. Well, I think it's closer to a K4.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah. For those that don't know, they used to use Martin dyes and color Xeroxes, and then you would code each color. with a numerical and lettered code, you know, like Y3
Right.
B4, which would be or C4. So it would be like Y and cyan, which is blue, you know, which would create this greenish color, you know, that type of thing. And they used to have to hand do that. Now, of course, all separations are done, you know, on the computer in Photoshop, so that it separates all those plates,
Yeah.
all those color plates for the printing process.
It was a far more technical process back then, and all those guys were so conversant in it.
Oh yeah. You know, the funny thing is, when I was working for King Features on the strips, you know, in the 2000s, they were still so far behind the curve that I was still doing that. I was taking markers and coloring the strips and then marking them according to their color codes.
Wow. That would make me nuts.
I know. And I offered to do it digitally, but they didn't offer to pay me more. So I said, okay, I'm just going to color code it, and you can pay a separator now. Oh my God.
Jeez.
Bane Conquest solo series was great. We got to see the behind the scenes of Bane, the way he worked with his team. Yeah. I was just talking about that series with somebody recently, asking about it. And I was like, well, you know, we left a lot of really cool breadcrumbs of stuff we wanted to explore in that series. And it just, you know, DC went all in on the Tom King stuff and decided, you know, that they didn't want to go in our direction. And that was that.
And then they killed him.
So. And then they killed him. And I think they've brought him back since then, right?
Oh, don't that quickly.
I thought I read something about there's a Bane storyline coming up or something.
Well, I mean, it's like they have two ideas now. They either kill a character or they turn out to be gay. And they really don't,
yeah. I'm just waiting.
Between, so
I'm waiting for the gay Bane.
Yeah.
You know, after all, Chuck, he was raised in a prison.
Yes. The issue did come up. So.
You know, he and Osito.
Yes.
Somebody asked about that earlier. You know, where did the idea for his teddy bear come from?
I just wanted him to have a teddy bear. I wanted some aspect of him being a child, and then he still has it. Because it's like a memento. Plus the fact that he used it to hide a knife.
So, oh, in Vengeance of Bane too.
Right. So it's I just wanted that aspect of childhood to constantly remind the readers that this guy grew up in a prison.
Yeah.
And he is innocent. Society literally created it.
Yeah, that's such a great scene in Vengeance of Bane too, where he pulls the head off and it's got that shank in there, and then he shoves it through the eye or through the head of that guy when he was still Fat Bane.
Yeah,
he was chubby Bane because Bane was coming off. He was in prison. And he was, obviously going through the DTs of coming off his steroid and all that kind of stuff. And, he eventually has to build himself back up to this, hulking Bane, but without the juice.
Right. We definitely wanted to show the downside of the steroids and the human growth hormones and whatever the hell else was in Venom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it killed everybody that they were experimenting on at Santa Prisca, and he was the first guy to survive it.
Right.
So, great stuff. Great stuff. You know what? It's great to talk about Bane and the stuff we did back then. But, both you and I are busy, moving forward with other things, other creations. And, I showed my opening before we started the show, the Ghost of Matacumba Key, the latest thing from Compass Comics, which ties in all my universe together, which includes Monster Island and Chuck's and my Joe Frankenstein as well. But Chuck is, has never been out of work. He's always constantly writing. He's got novels that he's writing, and he's got comics that he's writing. Why don't you tell the chat about some of the stuff that you have coming up, Chuck?
Well, I got a Rambo graphic novel. It's at Indiegogo. I'm putting it here in the chat. It's idea that Sylvester Stallone always wanted to tell Rambo's origin, and he talks a lot about Rambo's origin in interviews and stuff like that. And so I got the idea. Well, why don't we do it as a comic, sort of Rambo Year One? So First Kill is a graphic novel by me about it takes John Rambo from a high school student in Arizona to his first tour. And it's a stand-up war story, and a lot of it is based on things that were told to me by vets firsthand who were there, and a lot of it is stuff that I was told when I was writing the Marvel comic, but this stuff would never pass the comics code. So,
and is that on Indiegogo?
Yeah, that's on Indiegogo.
Okay, if the mods, if you guys could put that into the chat, I'd really appreciate it. First Kill, by Chuck on Indiegogo. Then, of course, Chuck and I are going to be launching Spin Rack, which is a company that is going to be, we're first coming out with a match game, which is a mobile game for your phones and stuff, which is going to involve Joe Frankenstein, Law Dog, and my sister Suprema.
Yep.
Three of our properties. And then next there'll be a fighting game after that. And then eventually after that, like a more extensive 3D game, NFTs, and going into Web3 and a metaverse. So, we're still very, very vital, very, very busy doing stuff separately and together. And, I think that's just awesome that, we've been working together since 1986, I believe. Was the first time that we worked together on
Skywolf.
Airboy, Skywolf, the backup story in Airboy, and the world has never been the same. And they're blaming us for that.
Yes, it's all our fault. Yeah,
it's all our fault.
The whole Spin Rack thing is cool because it's it combines our universes, our intellectual properties, and the thing that I like to stress is it's creator owned and creator driven, and we're not licensing this stuff to Spin Rack. Graham and I are Spin Rack,
right? Exactly.
Along with a lot of other talented people.
Yeah, exactly. We have people from other disciplines, film and business and
gaming and tech.
And
these people are superstars in their own worlds.
Oh yeah. We feel like idiots sometimes when we're talking with them.
I feel like idiots every time we talk to them.
I never wanted to say it, Chuck, but you're an idiot.
Like I have to be the dumbest guy in the room. Because at first, like only 25% of what the hell they were talking about made any sense to me at all. Now it's like, okay, I'm on a learning curve here.
Right.
And, whenever Jeff starts talking, it's like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
This guy I got a race to keep up with this guy.
Yeah. And Jeff will throw like a truth bomb out, like, we'll all be talking and then there'll be like this quiet thing, and Jeff will say, well, I think that blah blah blah, and it's like, ah, shit.
Yeah,
you're right.
He's so humble about it, and every once in a while he'll drop a little story about stuff he's done in the past, and it's not like bragging. It's just like, well, I had this example back in the 90s, and it's like, holy crap, you did that?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm putting some of Chuck's links in here for you guys. Private chat, there it is. Okay, there we go. Thanks for putting those in the private chat, bud. There we go.
Yeah, we've managed to stay busy. I mean, not to go all Sammy Maudlin on you, but I'm so proud of you, Graham. I mean, what you've built, for yourself, this comic book empire through the crowdfunding and everything else. So I know how much work goes into it, and
Yeah.
it's amazing what you've done in a relatively short amount of time.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm working harder than I ever have, but I'm happier than I've ever been too,
Yeah,
because I'm working for myself, and I own everything, and I have total control. I'm sort of a control freak, um, and I try to let go of that sometimes when I'm dealing with other people. But I found out through some introspection that I am a bit of a control freak. I like to things a certain way, and so I've been enjoying doing it like that. So
well, it's neat. I mean, I'm in the same position now. You get up in the morning and go, what do I want to do?
right.
So you're not asking permission to create anymore.
Exactly. And you're not
And,
out there spending half your time fishing
oh,
for that next project, schmoozing and trying to get in here, and make contacts and stuff. It's like, you know what? I got an idea. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to put it out there. And I know people will. We're not an island. If I like it, somebody's going to like it.
right.
You
I mean, and the thing is, this whole era is a godsend to me because I'm the worst schmoozer in the world. I hate pitching. I mean, Archie
know.
Goodwin once said, "Yeah, this pitch from Chuck sucks, but he delivers on the scripts." Like, I write the worst pitch ever, but I'll sweat the story to make sure it works.
Right.
But I hated all of that. I mean, I only ever went to one comic book company Christmas party, and it was only because a friend of mine begged me to take it to do it to a DC Christmas party because I didn't do that. I wanted my work to speak for itself. And I
What
was
year
always
was
afraid
that?
because I'm a loudmouth. I'd say something to offend somebody.
I hear that.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you can't work here anymore.
Yeah. Well, do you remember what year that was?
Gosh, it was early on. It was probably like, man, it would have to been like 91.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And we went to, it was, you remember Clint McElroy?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. He desperately wanted to go to the DC Christmas party. Can you get me in? Only if I take you. So, he was my plus one.
To tell that story, I got to go run to the bathroom real quick. So
Okay.
tell that story, and I'll be right back.
All right, I will. One of the funny parts of this story was Graham's going to be sorry. He's going to miss this. We go to the Christmas party, and something happened, which was the main reason I never want to go to these Christmas parties. We were standing there. It was at some club, and it's all DC people. I didn't know most of them, and we noticed this girl at the bar, and we're looking at her. And Archie Goodwin comes up, and he sees that we're looking at this girl at the bar, and he says, "So yeah, she's pretty good looking, isn't she?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he made a remark about the girl's breasts, and we're like, "Well, yeah." And we're like, "Where's this going?" And then Archie said, "That's my daughter." So hey, I've kind of hijacked Graham's show here, so I could get him deplatformed right now by whatever I say next, but I'm not going to do that because we've been buddies too long. So, yeah, I mean, the reason why one of the main reasons why Graham got the Batman assignment was because I pushed for him really hard. Originally, Mike Nasser was my regular artist and detective, and he had to leave for whatever reason. And they were like casting about for who was next. And they were giving me this list of possible replacements for Mike Nasser, and he was Mike Netzer at the time. And I said, I don't like any of these guys. Let's get Graham Nolan. And it's funny looking at the history. They weren't sure Graham was suited for Batman. And I said, you're nuts. You're out of your minds, because Graham is like this huge Batman fan. He's a Batman scholar. He knows everything about the character. And he draws the real world so well, which is one of the things I really liked about Graham. He's got that artist's eye for the real world and how to recreate it on a comic book page. Graham is one of the, he's a guy that if you wrote this female character is an attractive woman in her 40s, Graham could make her look like an attractive woman in her 40s, where some artists would either make her look like she was 17 years old, or some other artist would make her look like she was 140. So that's why, I really wanted him on the title, and I really wanted to do a long run with him, and I knew that Graham was equally interested. So
that's
we
enough
did that.
about
We did a
you.
long run.
That's enough about you. Let's talk about me.
I was talking about you. Yeah, enough about me. What do you think of me?
Yes, that's enough about you. What I miss?
Well, as I told your listeners, you'll probably be deplatformed in the morning when this.
Oh, attaboy.
Yeah.
I knew we were getting to that point.
Yeah, I just said some horrible things, just unforgivable. I could never walk them back.
I appreciate that. That's true friendship. All I need now, we got to get Bo in here for the
yeah. Yeah, as soon as you're out of earshot, I went.
Hey, Grahamo.
I'm driving the bus now, buddy. Right off that cliff.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Oh, so much fun. My God. All these years, Chuck and I, now it's 36 years.
Yep.
Right? 36. Yep. 36 years of working together. And, it's just been an incredible ride. We've had so much fun and done so many wonderful projects together. I'm going to tell you something about Chuck that nobody knows. He hates circular panels. and you know how I know that? He told me. I did a circular panel in Bane Conquest #1, and I sent the page in. I thought it was a really great Kubert-esque page. It's the circular panel, and then this boat is exploding and everything, and the Bane and the crew are on this little skiff getting off. And he says, "Yeah, I hate round circular panels." And I said, "But Kubert does them all the time." And he goes, "You're no Kubert." Oh my God. That's when you know you got a pal.
We've always been brutally honest with each other.
Absolutely.
Never been afraid. I always say that I already know when Graham's going to say that idea sucks. He just sort of gets this look, and he starts making this sound like, and then okay, we're not doing it that way.
Yeah, Chuck's in pitch mode, and he's like, and then this happens, and this happens, and he hears, And then he's on the script with his pen going, "No, that's not happening."
Or if I'm in the room with him telling him something, and I just get this look that says, "I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You are not making any sense right now." Were you in the room when I described the Wheel of Plagues for Legacy?
It does sound familiar.
Yeah. I got all worked up about the Wheel of Plagues.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I felt like a dope because everybody's just, Doug and Alan are just like wondering when lunch is.
That we did that in Tech 700, right?
Yeah. It was.
Okay.
It was Ra's al Ghul's Wheel of Plagues.
Yeah. So. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Dale A., thank you for that $2 super chat. Will we ever get a How to Write the Dixon Way book?
Yeah, I don't like the competition. I don't want to encourage it. But no, somebody's approached me about doing that. They sort of like gave me an ultimatum that I gotta do it. So Something like that will appear in the future.
I'm buying that book.
But you can always go to Ask Chuck Dixon. I mean, it's basically a tutorial every week.
True. Hey, speaking of Tech 700, there is a really great classic Batman trap in there. You know, it's right up there with you know, the great Bill Finger. And I remember when Chuck and I were talking about the story, we needed this trap, and I told Chuck about this sequence that I had heard in the Lone Ranger radio program.
Right.
And the Ranger and Tonto were stuck in a cistern, and the water was filling up, and they had a lid over the top with a hole so that the air could get out. And then the Lone Ranger takes like his tunic and he covers up the hole. And then the air pressure that builds up as the water rises, and since it can't escape through that hole, it pops the thing out, and Tonto and the Ranger are able to get out. And I remember telling Chuck about that, and he's like, "Oh, we got to put that in a story." And there it is in Tech 700.
Yeah, but I also said we got to deal with what the real world consequences of that would be. Is that air pressure would?
Oh, the air pressure on the ears and
yeah,
yeah. And I think
remember Robin passes out.
Yeah. Tim passes out, but Batman holds it together
because he's Batman.
Because he's Batman. That's right.
I think that's one of the things we always tried to do was traps. Because I remember the one on the buoy out in the middle of the river in Gotham. I mean, we both like a good trap, but
yeah,
they're hard to come by. They're hard.
Is that the one on the buoy?
Yeah, where he's tied onto the buoy, and then you got to come up with the trap, and then how do they escape it? Without getting killed.
Right.
So, those are tough.
Yeah. I when trolls come into the room, I don't like to post their things, but this guy,
Yeah, what's this guy? What's he been in comics? 5 minutes?
Yeah. So much hot air in this room. Yeah. That hot air is warming you up in those cold West Virginia nights, pal.
He creates his own. I mean, he talks to himself all the time. He says he's talking to the dog, but
yeah. His entire Facebook page is Cobb.
His dog.
Well,
it's his only friend.
That's true. That's true. We kind of like him too, but there he goes. I'm in good company. That's it, brother. Yeah. Bo and Chuck and I, we go back so many years together. The three of us are like peas in a pod. You can say something, and you're never going to offend the guy. You can bust each other's balls, and it's just so much fun.
I remember the first time I met Bo, he was brought on to be a marketing guy for Eclipse Comics.
Right.
And Dean introduces me, and here's this guy, he's wearing his sharp suit, everything else. Then he opens his mouth, and he's from West Virginia, and you can tell. and I shook his hand, and he told me his name was Bo, and I just knew in that moment, I am going to know this guy for the rest of my life. I'm going to know this guy for the rest of my life. Because that's easy. He's got that kind of magnetic personality.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll say this for Bo's benefit. He's too affable. That was the criticism he actually got from somebody once.
But Bo is
affable.
He's honest and real.
Yeah, he is. He is. No bullshit.
I remember the first time I met both you guys at the same time, and that was at Chicago Con in like 1986. There was a hotel room, and there was Tim Truman, you, Bo, Tim Harkins.
No.
I think maybe Gary Quapitz, and possibly Flynn Henry as well. And I remember, knocking on the door, and the door opens, and Truman, opens up the door, and he grabs me in this bear hug and pulls me into the room. And all you guys are like on the beds and on the chairs, because all these guys in this one little hotel room. And that's the first time I got to meet everybody, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, those were good days. Those were good days.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I knew they were good days at the time. So
yeah.
No.
I loved and Bo and I have talked about this, that those conventions that they used to have at that Rosemont
Yeah.
hotel,
Yeah.
which were great because, you know, everybody in the chat, you go to these conventions now, these big corporate things, and there's a definite separation between the talent and the fan base. And at that Rosemont hotel, the bar was right in the center
Right.
of the hotel, so you couldn't go anywhere without passing that bar. And at the end of a con, you know, I mean, you could be standing next to Joe Blow, next to me, next to Stan Lee. I
Right.
mean, that's exactly how it was. And everybody was just standing around talking and chit chatting. And I remember standing next to Stan Lee
Yeah.
right there. You know, I mean, it was just so cool. You know, you
It was a
couldn't
sense of,
go anywhere either unless you wanted to get a cab, because Rosemont's near the airport and it's away from the city of Chicago. So, you know, you had to, you know, you either had to pay for a cab, but most of the time you just stayed there, you know. And
yeah,
I love that insuliness, you know.
yeah, there was like a camaraderie. I mean, a few years ago, I was stranded in Chicago because they had one of those things where all the flights got delayed,
Right?
canceled, and the airline put me up. That's where they put me up. And my God, what a shithole that hotel was. I mean, it seems like a palace in my memories going to the cons, but my God, the place was horrible.
You were in the same place?
Same place. They put me
Oh,
up
I'll
in
be
the same
damned.
place. And man, it was a wow. I didn't remember how awful this hotel was.
Well, maybe it ran down a little bit since
No,
then.
no, it looked the same. It's just
Ah!
my memories made it look cooler, you know. And
Well,
who cared? Who cared anyway? You know, it was
yeah.
about the
Well, the
con.
problem was you were by yourself, and me and Bo
That's it.
weren't there.
That's it. That's
Hey,
it.
Dr. Mass Retro Elixir, thank you for that $4.99 super chat. Hail, happy birthday, Bane. Ooh, got a nice bourbon there. If you guys got the rights for Bane back from DC for some crazy reason, what is the first story you would want to do? That's a great question.
Just continue on. He's the head of Cobra now.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would love to continue on what we started in Bane Conquest.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
he's just the
because
king of DCU's underworld.
right, and we had tied it in with Apocalypse and all those great Kirby characters. There's
Right.
so many cool shit that we could you know explore.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the beginning, you know, once we got on this character, we knew, well, you know, we could take this guy a lot of places, you know, and I think we had a roadmap, you know. I mean, Bane Conquest didn't come out of nowhere. It's kind of where we were going from the beginning.
Yeah. The cool thing about Bane Conquest, I think, is that, you know, so many people between our last Bane series, which was I guess Bane of the Demon, right?
Yeah.
So that was a lot of years between Bane of the Demon and a lot of people doing Bane and not actually getting the character right.
Right.
So when Chuck and I had this opportunity, we we wanted to bring Bane back to his original version of this great tactician, this great thinker, and this badass, and sort of the what we were handed was make Bane the Doctor Doom of the DC universe,
Right.
and that's what we did, and I love that series. I thought it came out great.
No, I was very happy with the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, we accomplished what we set out to do.
Oh yeah, definitely, and you know it's DC's, you know, loss that they decided not to, you know, move forward with it.
Well, that's the problem with DC. They always had their darlings, and they would promote them. I mean, it's a weird company in that they pretty much told us that Watchmen and Return of the Dark Knight are like the pinnacle of comic book creation, and nothing will ever duplicate that. So it's like, wow, that's a downer. That's not very encouraging.
Yeah, and talk about boxing yourselves in.
Yeah, it's like the history of comics is over. It ends here. And you're always we were always being told that. Well, this isn't as good as, you know, Batman Year One. It's like, well, I think it is. And I remember when I did Robin year one, I said, you need to like do the same trade dress as Batman year one. And they were horrified. You're comparing yourself to Batman year one? I said, well, from a marketing standpoint, isn't that the smartest thing to do? How are you going to market it saying this isn't as good as Batman year one? But yeah, you might want to look at it. I mean, it was just their business sense. They didn't have any business sense.
Yeah. Stat Zero here says he's had a bit of a grudge with DC since he didn't see Chuck and Graham's names on Detective 1000. And, I got to say, as a man with Irish Alzheimer's, that's where we forget everything but the grudges. I feel the same way. I felt that we were slighted on that. There's so many people had no connection to Batman whatsoever in that book. And yet, the two guys that did the most stuff in the 90s with the character weren't invited to that party. And that was no accident.
No. I mean, for years, they would collect my stuff I'd written in trades and my name wouldn't be on the cover. And that was on purpose. But everybody else, it was, Joe Potato Salad's Wonder Woman.
Right.
Like, wow.
But they made up for it because of the credit we got in Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah. Special thanks.
Oh, wait a minute. We didn't get any credit in Dark Knight Rises. Oh, yeah. My bad. Oh, but the caterer did.
Yes. The Bat Wrangler got credit.
The Bat Wrangler, the dog handler, all those guys got credit.
Yeah, well, that's the I look at like Japan where the manga guys are like the executive producer of the movie and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's never going to happen here. Oh
yeah.
We are the maids of honor. We're just left behind when the limousine pulls away.
Oh man,
I love it. I love it, especially when they go, well, you can come to the premiere. They ask you 2 days before the premiere.
Right. Oh, and where's the premiere? L.A.
Yeah. And how do I get there? Well, that's up to you.
You're right. And where do I stay? Yeah, there's plenty of hotels. But we wanted to invite you.
Yeah. So they can say, well, we invited them and they didn't show up. That's
we did our best, to get them here. Yeah.
Like stand on the red carpet and then go in and watch your crappy movie.
Yeah. The caterer did get a story, I think, in Detective 1000.
Yeah, it had the Condiment King in it.
The Condiment King. That's great. Oh. The uninvitation.
Yeah. We'd love for you to be here if you could crawl over broken glass.
The worst thing would be if we actually showed, because I think they invite us thinking they're never going to come. And then we show up, they're like, oh,
yep,
that would be terrible.
And somebody sticks a mic in our face and we're like, yeah, they screwed us over.
Yeah. Who are you? Who are you guys? We're the caterers.
Oh man. I mean, I always remember that when Jack Kirby and Joe Simon made enough money, because they were Comicdom's first millionaires, and they were able to buy like an actual house, on Long Island. They lived in this housing development on Long Island. And they both told their kids, when people ask you what we do for a living, tell them we're bookies. Because they didn't want anybody to know they were comic book artists.
Well, that was the thing. Stan, too, was always reluctant to say what he did. He'd just say he's a writer. It was like the redheaded stepchild if you worked in comics.
Well, even today, people say, what do you do? Well, I'm a writer. And then, well, what do you write? And I'm like, there's two ways it can go wrong. Either they don't care about comics or they really care about comics. And I'm never going to get away from them.
Yeah, but you know what? When we were kids and stuff, at a certain age, you were embarrassed to say you read comics or to find it, your friends find out that you read comics.
I'll tell you.
But
I'll tell you a
nowadays,
funny. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in high school, I worked on the school newspaper, and one of the girls who worked on the school newspaper, she wanted to do a series of columns about students and their hobbies, right? And she said, "I can't get anybody to talk to me about their hobbies." I said, "Well, I collect comic books." And she says, "See what I mean? You don't want people to know that." Oh,
case in point.
there you go. There you go.
That's funny. Oh my goodness. I think my internet's starting to drop here.
Yeah, you're doing a little max headroom.
Yeah, hold on a second here. That's weird.
Not another blizzard, is there?
No blizzard.
Yeah,
Maybe
down here,
I'll stop the camera.
yeah, down
so
here,
that-
it's when a seagull lands on the telephone lines. You know, the internet just goes nuts.
Yeah, that's better. Sometimes the camera, sucks up a lot of that power.
Right, right. Well, everybody's watching Netflix now, you know, so your
Well, that's that too. Everybody in the
bandwidth got smaller.
Yeah, that's true. I think Dr. Mask is right. The commies are jamming the signal.
It's always the
Or the caterer. That's great. That's great.
That's awesome.
Well, Chuck, I want to thank you for coming on tonight and to celebrate our boy's birthday.
Well, I hope we all learn something.
Yes. Yeah. Bane's two daddies couldn't be prouder of their son.
Yes. He's done okay.
30 years later.
And thousands of action figures.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Maybe once in a while they'll send them to us. Oh, wait, what's this? Did you two know that DC is doing a Bane Year One book?
We already did Bane Year One.
We did?
Yeah. It's called Nightfall.
Oh.
The hell else would you tell? There's no. Oh, God.
Oh, that's true. We started at the beginning of him being a baby. We actually have him being born.
Yeah. I mean, come on. We saw him in Year One, but his actual Year One.
Yeah. Huh. Well, as long as they pass, that's fine.
Well, yeah, because if they call it Bane, don't they have to give us some money for that?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll do Bane Year 1 through 10 then. Knock yourselves out, DC.
And I'll remind you what my address is too, by the way. Just in case. But everybody in the chat, thank you for coming and celebrating Bane on his 30th anniversary tonight. And we really appreciate it. We love the character. Wish that we could do more with him, but those days seem to be past. But Chuck and I are busy doing other creations, and we're having the times of our lives doing that kind of stuff. So sometimes you can't go home. You just kind of look back and enjoy the ride. But we're doing great stuff now too. So I hope you guys will support that, and appreciate you coming in the room. And Bo Smith says happy anniversary. Thank you, Bo.
Thank you, Bo.
Yeah. And we will see you again next week sometime. Have a great night. Bye, everybody.
Vaya con Dios.
Vaya con Dios.